college football recruiting, Oregon Ducks recruiting is very much a puzzle. There's a lot of pieces sitting on the table, and a lot of times those pieces are moving in different directions. Sometimes they're moving towards you and the puzzle becomes very clear, but then other times, sometimes one piece maybe gets taken out of the shuffle and all of a sudden now you don't have a clear picture anymore. There's a lot of moving puzzle pieces, I think, in the wide receiver room right now for the class of 2026. The first thing that I want to begin with is some pretty recent news considering two four-star wide receivers right now. There's an on-3 RPM prediction for four-star wide receiver Jalen Lott out of the state of Texas, and then modern day's Caden Dixon Wyatt flat out says, yeah, Oregon is in the lead for my recruitment certainly right now. When you talk about Dixon Wyatt, it's that modern day connection. We're going to be talking a lot about modern day as this show certainly concludes right now. But you look at him, he's 118th overall, number 17 in the wide receiver rankings right now. Jalen Lott is really that connection to Texas that was certainly laid down by Rashad Samples with the recruitment and flip of Decorian Moore. And Jalen Lott is a really, really good player. He's the number 67 overall player in the country, the number 10 wide receiver right now. Like, if I'm this Oregon coaching staff, and there's a lot of priorities, certainly, and we're going to lay them out here for you on this very show. There's a lot of priorities, but I would love to get these two four-star, solid to really good talents in this 26 class locked up, and then maybe shift my wide receiver resources elsewhere. Let's talk about elsewhere right now. Elsewhere is in Santa Ana, California. Elsewhere is at Modern Day High School in the form of five-star wide receiver, current Ohio State commitment in Chris Henry Jr. He was on campus this past weekend. He was on campus earlier for Oregon's Junior Day, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, something like that. It's funny because he says as long as Brian Hartline is the wide receivers coach, is the offensive coordinator over at Ohio State, I'm going to be locked into the Buckeyes. For being a guy that's locked into Ohio State and that has made those types of comments before, the door just remains cracked open, and he keeps on finding his way out west over to Eugene, Oregon. All Dan and this staff needs is the crack in the door that's open, and they're going to bring the axe to the door, pound it through the door, and say, here's Danny. Like, that's what this staff has proven with some elite level prospects in the past. If you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Look at the recruitment of Naeem Offord. He was committed to Ohio State. It really came down, I believe it was Oregon and Auburn last signing day, and Oregon came in there. He put on the O cap, and a lot of people were kind of surprised by that move. Dan Lanning is the ultimate quiet closer when it comes to recruiting. All this staff needs is to continue to get a guy like Chris Henry Jr. on campus. Keep him interested. The longer that this recruitment stays with this steam, where there's steam, there's smoke, where there's smoke, there's fire. As long as those things remain present and Oregon keeps on getting him on the West Coast, this recruitment is not going to be over until signing day in December, certainly right now. And I'll say this, and we're going to be talking about quarterbacks here in just a little bit, getting a commitment from a high-quality five-star quarterback like, Jared Curtis is also going to really help this as well. I still maintain the fact that Chris Henry Jr. he's probably a long shot to flip to the Ducks, but what a huge flip that would be if they are indeed able to pull this off. The door has not been shut. Certainly, like Kendra Harrison on the Ducks, he has shut the door. Tredarian Ball has all but shut the door on his recruitment. the door remains open. And the longer that door remains open, the longer distance it is from Ohio State winning the national championship from New Year's Day. And we all certainly know what happened there. I'm convinced that the longer this thing goes on, the better chance that Dan Lanning and this Ducks staff are certainly going to have as this thing goes along. But that's a little bit of a moving piece right now, and I think that's maybe where a lot of the resources at the wide receiver position are going for this Oregon staff in this 2026 class right now. But here's one thing to keep in mind. If Chris Henry Jr. does not flip over to Oregon, and like I said, I think it's a long shot. If I were to predict now, I'd probably say that is not going to happen. One thing I think people forget when they talk about the class of 2026 is there is a kid committed, what was that, last year, 2 years ago, during the February signing period in Gatlin Bear, that was a 5-star wide receiver, top 30 player in the country. That is that elite level of player, and he's going to be coming in as a freshman next year in the 26 class. Like, if your worst case scenario is Gatlin Bear followed by 2 4-star wide receivers that are both top 150 guys, you're sitting in a really, really good spot right now. And then you look at what happened last year. They signed DeCorian Moore, and then they signed Cooper Perry as well. So that's 5 blue chip wide receivers, maybe 6 if they somehow fit Chris Henry Jr. in there. That's 5 blue chip wide receivers in the last 2 years. That's a really good receiving haul in a 2-year period there from the Oregon Ducks. Either way, certainly like the way this thing is headed, and the puzzle continues to be put together, certainly for the Ducks, as it pertains to the recruitment of the wide receiver room.